8-hour day has nothing to do with being a farmer.
Paul Wright is a third-generation dairy farmer. Born and raised in Hutchinson, he says farming isn't a job, it's a way of life.
Our alarm clock goes off at 5:30 in the morning. It doesn't matter if we're sick or healthy. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas Day, Sunday morning, or when it is. The cows have to be milked.
It's a special relationship that Wright has with his 55 milking cows, like watching this one-day-old being born, and they all get names.
You sound pretty attached to these cows.
Oh, they get to be pretty attached because you're with them every day.
But Wright and his family have reached a breaking point. They're selling their cows and getting out of the dairy business by the end of this year. Low milk prices, tariffs, and shrinking markets means Wright hasn't made a profit in 4 years. In down years in the past, Wright could depend on other crops to make up the losses.
And we're now to a point where it doesn't matter what you raise, whether it's dairy cattle or whether it's in the grains and hogs, you cannot get to the profit margin.
As a McLeod County commissioner, he says farmers are hurting more than ever, and it's led to increased levels of depression and suicide among them. And he's not immune either.
It depends on what you call that actual stage of depression. Go through a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure out what's next. Yeah. Spend some days and days trying to figure out how do we do this? How do we pull it together?
Governor Walz recently held a roundtable at the Capitol. Farmers and mental health was a top issue.
Every meeting I go to, what they talk about, you don't get crop nutrient recommendations. You get how to protect yourself from mental health issues, where to get help, responding to stress. It is truly a crisis going on right now.
But linking farmers to needed resources is a challenge. Often, community mental health providers say they don't know who needs help until it's too late.
I think this is a very private culture. It's a culture it's a dynamic of folks where they like to keep things private. They like to keep things in their home, and they're proud. And I think it's hard to reach these folks. And so they're experiencing depression, but unfortunately we're not seeing them coming in through our doors.
KJOS says the stigma of mental health and depression is strong among farmers in the 7-county area they serve. They've started to leave brochures and business cards in places like banks or churches to reach farmers where they are.
Mental health conditions are medical conditions. Pure and simple. They're medical conditions. And if a farmer was facing cancer or diabetes, they would go get treatment. And it needs to be the same for their mental illness.
But farmers see little relief in sight. Ted Matthews has been a one-man band counseling farmers around the clock for 20 years from his office in Hutchinson. He says it's hard to know how big the problem is because he can't get to everyone.
This is Ted.
But he's getting more calls than ever.
When a farmer sees a need to do something to get from point A to point B, they're always more than willing to do it. But when they have no power or control over what's going on, that creates a lot more stress.
He says a big part of that has to do with the current political climate. Farmers see help being held up by politics and bureaucracy.
The Farm Bill passes, and then now they're not going to even be meeting until July or August, and I can tell you for sure that there's not a farmer that I know that thinks that that's okay.
And now, Matthew says farmers make up one of the highest rates of suicide in the country. Kitson County Commissioner and farmer Teresa Gilley knows all too well.
My husband and I started farming back in 1986.
2 years ago, tragedy hit. She says financial woes, depression, and diabetes were factors.
Keith killed himself April 1st, 2017, and I have never had a day that I haven't gotten up and taken a shower and gotten at least something done. Of course, as the time's gone on, now I'm getting up to 2 years. I do a lot more now.
Gilley's neighbors pulled together and helped her get her crops planted and harvested. Having support was crucial.
You kind of think, how do you pay all these people back, And the deal is you don't. You pay it forward.
She says farmers today don't have the big nuclear families they once did to help when times get tough.
With automation and stuff, you can do a lot by yourself, but it also leaves you by yourself.
Paul Wright still has that farmer's optimism. He says they've got plans that will hopefully turn things around. And he says consumers can make a big difference if they care enough about the family farms.
There's been a large consumer push towards wanting to know more about where their food comes from. And I encourage people to continue that interest.
Unless something changes, he says corporations will be the only ones left in farm country.